Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. I have a special guest for you today, Dr. Tiffany E. Slater, and we're going to be talking about all things, I'll call it modern HR. Tiffany partners with organizations to provide seamless, fractional HR support. We'll talk about what that means for their team, because not every organization needs to have or has a full HR department, especially when they're getting started. Tiffany steps in as a partner and helps streamline all things HR, of which there are many things to tackle, and we'll go into that today. She has over 25 years of HR professional experience in all aspects of human resources. And she has an experience in a variety of sectors, including union and non-union, pre-K through 12 public education, property management, manufacturing, and casino industries, just to name a few. Welcome, Tiffany. Before we dive into HR things, would you share something about yourself personally, just to round you out as a whole person?
Sure. So I'm a mom of two teenage boys. They're 13 and 15. And my husband is an entrepreneur on the side. He has an actual job in IT as well. And my high schooler is on the basketball team, and they are playing for the state championship this week. So that's exciting.
Oh, congratulations. You must be a proud mama.
Pretty cool.
Very exciting. Well, let's dive in. First of all, and I know we've had previous episodes where we've talked about other kind of fractional executives, but would you just explain the concept of a fractional HR person? And then maybe we'll go into like some of the things that people need to be mindful of. But what is a fractional HR person?
Yeah. So, and actually, you'll start to hear that term more for all kinds of professional service providers on a fractional basis. Essentially, it is us sitting in that seat for you at a fraction of the cost that it would be if you were to hire a full-time person. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah, I like that answer. And I was not expecting to ask you this, but you're so right that this term fractional is coming up more and more. And I don't think the concept is totally new. We used to talk about like outsourcing something, but what do you think is the kind of slight shift that has caused the word fractional to be so popular or gaining popularity?
Yeah, I think the difference is individuals who are doing the work of a fractional person. We are truly insiders on the outside. Whereas before, when you were outsourcing it, they weren't necessarily a part of the organization and a part of the culture. So I think that is what makes it different. We are a part of the team. So when our clients talk about HR TailorMade, they're like, our HR manager or HR leader. It's not our HR consultant. But sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's more, or we are a part of the team as well.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. I see that as well, that like it's part of your team.
Mhm.
And also just no statistics to back this up whatsoever, except my own personal observation is that those people who are doing fractional work are like truly high level experts, and they're not necessarily like an outsource agency where they're like a couple of high level advisors, but the people doing your stuff are really kind of lower level, lower paid folks, and they've kind of systematized it. Not that that's a bad system, but there's an intimacy, I think, that's coming with the fractional movement. It really, what I see for nonprofits, delivers a lot of value and a lot of high quality support. So I'm glad that you're doing fractional HR. Let's talk about what are some of the things that are involved with HR compliance that, especially people who are new or have never had a professional managing this are like surprised about things they need to be aware of.
One of the things that comes up a lot is what do we need to do when it comes time to either onboard or offboard someone? What are the things that we have to consider from a legal perspective? So those are the things that come up most often. And honestly, those are the areas that we spend a lot of our time in. Hiring people, finding the right person, and then bringing them on board. And what should onboarding look like? And then when it's time for a person to resign or be moved on, the question is, okay, do I need to give them their paycheck the moment that I terminate them? Or do I need to pay them their sick time and their vacation? So those are questions that we get a lot. And what we try to do to solve for those ahead of time is we always start with the employee handbook, and we make sure that we look at the policies that are there. We try to write policies in a way that allows the client to understand what needs to happen in our absence. Because honestly, we want our clients to grow to the point where they need a full-time person. We will stay with them gladly, but we want them to grow and expand. And we want to make sure that we leave a footprint that allows them to succeed beyond us.
Yeah. And what is that point? Like, what would you say is like the size range? Like, when should you start having an fractional HR professional looking at your stuff? And then at what point do you start to outgrow the fractional and should be thinking about bringing it in-house?
Yeah.
Full time.
I would say the moment that you have an employee or the moment that you think you're going to have an employee, the conversation with an HR person should begin at that point so that you are starting the employment relationship off on the right foot. Now, one of the things that we do is we offer hours of service as well. So we have a retainer, but we also say, okay, you don't need a retained HR person to support you on a monthly basis. You just need someone that you can pick up the phone and call when you need something. And so we do 10 hours or 20 hours, and they have 6 months to use that time. So a lot of times people just need an HR friend, and we like to serve in that role as well. But to answer your question about when to hire maybe an HR person or to get an outsourced person, I think the point at which a company or organization needs and retained support, when you get to the 25 employee mark or so, sometimes before that, but I would say 25 employees is a good point.
That makes a lot of sense. And what have you seen kind of change over the years when it comes to HR? Because I imagine there's, a lot of new tools, a lot of maybe even AI influencing things, and we have our whole remote work culture. I know I've certainly bumped up against that, like not every state is really modernized around the concept of that we're going to be working remotely with a lot of people. So what are some of the key changes that you see, and for better or worse?
One of the biggest ones that I've seen, well, obviously remote work, to work remotely or to not, that's one of them. But work-life balance has really taken off in those organizations where people matter. So I'm being very cautious and intentional with what I'm saying. In the organizations where people matter, wellness and work-life balance is taking over. They find ways to ensure that people really have the ability to live life to the fullest while also enjoying their work. They also create opportunities in the workspace for people to find joy. So that's one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of my clients, and the ones who don't necessarily do all of those things. They are really supportive of their team members, and they are forgiving when it comes to events for their children, or just all the things that bring us joy. They matter
Yeah.
to the leader of the organization in ways that it's obvious to the team as well.
Yeah. And I think that makes such a difference, not just in having a joyful team, but I truly believe, as a business consulting, that when your team is happy, they perform better. And when they are happy, they stay longer,
Yeah.
which in the long run is cheaper for you. So I think sometimes we get like in that scarcity mindset and we're like, oh, we can't provide these nice things because, we can't spend money, or we have to be, careful.
Mhm.
And inadvertently, you actually cost yourself more in the long run because you make it not fun
Exactly. And
to work there.
one of the things that I think we should all be aware of is there are ways to have benefits that don't break the bank. There are
Yeah.
things, that if you just made it to your team members, and maybe your team members even pay for it on their own, you as an organization making it available to them is cheaper than them going out and having to get it on their own. So there are things that we can do. Have a day where
Yeah.
you bring in a yoga instructor and do yoga on Monday for lunch, or Friday, do an afternoon warm, cool down. Just find a way to show your team that you appreciate them and that their wellness and health is important to you.
Yeah. Can you share? I mean, you've shared some great examples already, but because I know people like love the examples, help really spur people's
Mhm.
imagination. So, what are some other kind of creative or maybe ways that people can make the workplace more enjoyable? And also some of the things that might not be obvious, but that actually are very meaningful to people. What do you see? What examples can you share?
So I have so I'll give you a couple examples of things that my clients do. One of my clients, they're on Whidbey Island outside of Washington. I actually had the pleasure of going there to their team retreat, which was over the course of a week. So there was a day when we literally picked flowers in the garden. But the point is, we had that time together as a team to get to know each other on a deeper level. No, we weren't doing the work of the organization, but we were bonding as a team. And here I am in St. Louis, Missouri. They have another employee who's in Baltimore, and we were all able to be together. And 3 years later, I still have great relationships with those team members. So it's
Mm.
little things like that. We had a talent show around a bonfire. So we did a scavenger hunt. So it's little things like that. They were free. Those are free
Yeah.
things to do, but it's great opportunity to really spend some time together to get to know each other as a team. I have another client. They do a happy hour once a month in their facility. Uh,
Hmm.
it's like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they have all of the all of the things. One of the employees volunteers to be the bartender, and everybody has one drink together, and we just sit there and chop it up. So that's another idea. I have a client where they pick a day and they play board games together. Simple, free things that people can do that allow you to experience joy, have fun with each other, and get to know each other better. Sometimes we just need a break from the work.
Yeah, yeah. I think, so I teach my clients to use this business operating system that I created called the impact method. And part of it is over the course of the year, there are a minimum of 4 weeks of what I call respite. There are times where you're not on vacation, but you're not really working or you're doing the bare minimum. And I like to always say the respite is part of the work because just letting our, hanging out together, letting our brains not pursue something is really joyful. It builds, team spirit. And it also really helps us, oftentimes following respite, there is a burst of creative energy that will move the organization forward dramatically because people have ideas and inspiration and aha moments because our brains need that. And I think we don't get nearly enough of that in this day and age. We just don't get that message enough. We're always told to like rest or take care of ourselves, but I feel like that message of that actually letting our brains relax
Yes.
is really beneficial for business.
And I think more importantly in the nonprofit space, because the work, depending on the nonprofit that you work in and the type of work that you do, it can be really heavy. And working harder is not going to make that load any lighter.
No. And in a way, I think, it's very much like overloading a boat. I'm a sailor, so I like to use boat references. But when the heavier the boat, the more it sinks in the water, the slower it goes. And so you're better off keeping it light.
Agreed.
Yeah. So let's go, back to HR stuff. And I want to ask you, how do you see like AI and automation affecting HR workflows and policy?
So, with as it relates to anything, it depends on how it's used, right? I think that there are some people who don't use it appropriately. They use it to do the work and the thinking for them. I use it to support my work and to support my thinking. So if we use it in that way, from an HR perspective, I think that we'll be much more efficient because I will sit here for 2 hours thinking about how I should word a policy. But what I've started doing is saying, okay, here are my thoughts about this policy. Create a policy for me. So I have put in my best thinking as it relates to what I'm looking for with all of the parameters. And now I don't have to think about how to craft it. How should it sound? What word should I use to, so AI really for me has made me more efficient. So then I get a policy that I can go through and I can edit and make sure that it is worded in the way that I would word it. And then it's truly something that I can be proud of.
I completely agree with you about using AI in that way. I found that recently, especially that like it works really well if it always has to be your thoughts first, but you can kind of be messy with it, right? And be like, here's kind of what I'm thinking and here's a few resources. And I just typed it out as fast as I could, brain dump, and then it will like schloop everything together and give you your idea back, polished and organized. So I love that. And I think that's really, especially thinking about from the aspect of writing policy. And I think even to take it a step further, now I'm just thinking out loud, because I've mostly used it to kind of do that with my own work things, but I'm sure there are different versions, but in Chat GPT now, especially if you get it into article mode, you can then tell it to like bring the reading level down. So I imagine, especially when you're talking about like policies that typically aren't very exciting, just like I would, do you agree? Like bring that reading level down, keep it in plain language. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think that that's really helpful. And some of our policies are just overloaded with words. It's like, why? Can we just make it simple? So I enjoy being able to play with Chat GPT in that way as well. Like simplify it. Make this 5-page paragraph, 1 paragraph or 1 sentence. So, and those are things that would probably take me a couple hours to do. And Chat GPT can do it in less than a minute.
Yeah, it's literally, I've never been an HR person, but I used to focus primarily on marketing. And one of my favorite marketing activities I did with a large nonprofit that had one of these long, overly verbose handbooks. And now you can do this with AI. You don't need to hire a marketing agency with professional copywriters, but we had our copywriters take the key sections, especially where people tend not to follow it. And we just broke down, we made a series of emails with the key pieces where we kind of rewrote sections in a fun way with fun stories. And we send out the email about like, here's the fun little thing. And then here's the link to the official handbook. And we had this drip email series. So like it would go out, one a month, and it would basically last 6 months to a year. And then it would just repeat itself. So all the employees just got a little comical recap of the key things from the handbook in an email series. And that, I don't know if they're still using it, but it just, it worked for years on repeat like that. And I imagine that could be a really fun thing to do with an AI tool. Excellent. Well, let's talk about just a few things that people need to be aware of as far as, are there HR practices, like any kind of like do's and don'ts or things that you want to kind of flag for people to be aware of when it comes to their HR policies? Because there is this compliance piece. I know I had my own many years ago when I was kind of doing my first hires. I ended up running into a dispute with an employee who was working remotely and claimed I went away, and all of a sudden for a week, she claimed that she'd worked double the hours that she usually did. And I'm like, Anyway, it turned into a little dispute that went to New York State, whatever their, workers department, which is huge. And that is when I had that realization, like, oh, like I may try to be in compliance, but this is a whole specialized thing. I am liable for it. And at the end of the day, if I don't do it right, I'm up against New York State's, mega. They've got like dozens and dozens of lawyers who could just bury me in a second. So help people avoid my mistake of, getting into legal things. What do they need to watch out for and get really good help on?
And that's a really broad question because there's so many places or landmines as it relates to employment. The first thing I would say is make sure you have an employee handbook that is specific to your organization. A lot of new businesses and nonprofits will download an employee handbook that they got from somebody else, or one of their friends gave them their employee handbook, and all they did was change the cover to put their business name on it or organization name on it, instead of going into the handbook and reading the details of it and customizing it to fit their company. I've seen a company in Missouri with an employee handbook that spoke to policies for Tennessee. So you may as well not have an employee handbook, honestly, because it's not, if you don't have employees in Tennessee, the laws in Tennessee are not going to do you any good in Missouri. So that's one of the things that a lot of people fail to know. They just think they've checked the box. I have an employee handbook, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't apply to you. The other thing that is important, this is something that is a big deal for me, but when it comes to payroll, you should always have a payroll system that allows your team to have insight into their time off, into their paychecks, something that's easy for the team to use. A lot of organizations use QuickBooks to run their payroll. And it's not user friendly. It doesn't track PTO and vacation time and things like that. So it's clunky, and it does not give you or your team members the support that it needs in order to track their time, take time off, monitor how much they have. So just do something for yourself in the beginning. Research payroll systems. And pick one that is going to work for your organization.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I have my own bone to pick from the kind of CEO perspective. Is oftentimes when I ask like for a breakdown of your employee costs from a client, I want to know, like, so many payroll systems dump out, like, this was the tax burden, and it combines the employer taxes with the what's, taken out of the deductions from the employee paycheck. And you can't readily see how much is the employer part.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's like useless when it comes to planning for growing a team in the future. I want to know what the employer part is above and beyond what we're paying them. I don't care about what's coming out of employees' paychecks. That's based on their own deductions, right? And I am just surprised that this data doesn't come readily out of so many payroll systems. And so I'm just going to throw that in there. So while you're looking for one that's good for your employees, also get one that separates out so you know what your tax load is above and beyond the salaries that you're paying your folks.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else should people watch out for?
Yeah, so the onboarding process is really important. Make sure you have an actual onboarding experience for your new team members.
Yeah.
And I think that the onboarding experience starts at the moment that they say yes to taking the job. So what happens, between them saying yes and their first day is important. How are you going to keep them engaged? Maybe it's going to be a month or 2 weeks before they start working for you. Well, what are you going to do in between time to prepare for them and to make sure that they continue to be engaged along the way? So the other thing that drives me absolutely insane is the first day of employment. You sit them in front of a computer for them to do a bunch of trainings and to do all of their new hire paperwork. Send them the new hire paperwork beforehand. And if you have a payroll system, a good payroll system nowadays, all of that can be automated. So you want to send that to them before their first day so that you don't have to worry about that and it's already done. You want to make sure that you also get all of the things that they need to be successful in their job. Get all of that stuff ready before their first day. Don't spend the first day rooting around for passwords and usernames and a laptop and a this and a that. Have it done before they come in. Show them that you are prepared for them. Show them that you are excited about and that you are organized. And also, give them a roadmap to what their onboarding process is going to look like. What is the first week going to look like? Are you going to give them a project to do the first week? I think you should. I think that you should give them the opportunity to contribute immediately. That also allows you the opportunity to see how they work. They can see how you work. And it gives you a head start as it relates to getting on the right foot together so that you can both support each other. So those are very important. Set them up for success at the onset of the employment engagement.
Yeah. I think that's so critical. And I see that a lot with clients. I encourage them to kind of set up the first 3 to 6 months conceptually as, and I like to call it like a trial period. It's like a courting period, right? So you're learning about each other. You need to show your best to your new employee. They need to, and they need to bring it to the table, right? Of everything you hired them for. And the sooner you get people onboarded well, the sooner you can see what they're really capable of and confirm whether or not you made the right hire, because it's hard to know just from an interview process if you're truly the right fit. And I think all too often we, just like you said, like we think like, okay, they accepted the job and like that process is over. But that process of getting to know each other and confirming that you're both the right fit for each other, I think takes a few months of really getting into it together. And if you don't onboard them well, you're not getting a clear picture of what they're really capable of, because they're not going to be able. And I love that you specifically encourage people to get them working, get them doing a project right away. Because I think it's very natural when people come into a new situation as an employee, or I see this on boards as well. It's that question like, is this a culture like should I speak up on day one? Or am I like not supposed to? Will I be seen as like too opinionated, right? There's all this judgment about, especially, in our US based culture, there's a lot of judgment and varying cultural expectations about when it's appropriate to speak up, especially in a new relationship. So I think it's important to be explicit and say yes and encourage the behavior you want to see from day one and be consistent. I'm sure, like, as a parent of teenagers, you must know how important it is, right? To just deliver a consistent message around the expectation. If you just let it slide and then try to pull back, it's not really fair to the person, and it's not going to work out very well. Well, this has been great. Yeah, you had a follow-up to go ahead.
Very true.
Excellent. Well, we are at time. I'd love for you to share what kind of folks are best fit to work with you, and what is the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah. So they can reach us on our website at HRTailorMade.com. And the best clients or potential clients to reach out to us are those that have employee count of 50 or less. And we are hyper focused on nonprofits right now because we obviously, well, not obviously, but we connect with their mission, and we really enjoy working with our nonprofits a lot. So yeah, the other thing that's important too is most of our clients are hybrid. They are fully remote, either of those two. That's what we have.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany. And thank you out there for listening and all that you do to make our communities better. Before you disappear off into your day, I encourage you to share this podcast episode or another episode with a friend or colleague who you think would benefit from this information, because it will help them and it will help other folks who you don't even know find this podcast. Until next time, all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.